Hello, sunshines. Welcome to Cool House Connection. I'm your host, Deb Deckhand, and I love cool houses. Cool because of the views they frame, how they look and feel, or cool because of the community in which they nestle. I've built my decades-long real estate practice connecting the dots for folks between those types of houses here in Yancey and Mitchell counties in western North Carolina. It's my absolute passion to share what I've learned with all of you listeners. I'm really glad you've joined us, and I hope you find the bandwidth to keep listening and sharing what we discuss here with your friends and colleagues. You've heard me say it before that houses are vessels for our dreams. Today's episode is about something I think almost everyone has felt, even if they've never quite put words to it. And that's the difference between a house that looks impressive and a house that actually feels good to live in. Because those are not always the same thing. In fact, sometimes they're complete opposites. And I think one of the biggest tensions in modern home design is that we've become incredibly good at designing houses for photographs, for social media, for resale value, for visual impact, but not actually always for human life. And the strange thing is, most people don't realize this until after they've lived in the space for a while. At first, appearance is powerful. A dramatic kitchen sells emotion instantly. A soaring entryway feels luxurious, and a perfectly styled open concept room photographs beautifully. But then real life moves in. There's laundry and groceries and noise and shoes and work and dogs and children and fatigue and daily routines. And suddenly what looked good starts interacting with what life actually feels like. And that's where the truth of a house reveals itself. There's a difference between admiring and living. There are lots of homes that people admire and homes that people genuinely relax inside. Those are fewer. Interestingly enough, those categories overlap less often than you'd think. Some houses create immediate visual excitement, but slowly they become emotionally exhausting. Others feel almost underwhelming at first, but over time they reveal themselves to be deeply livable spaces. And I think part of the reason is that appearance and comfort operate on completely different timelines. Appearance is immediate. Livability is cumulative. You can understand visual beauty in seconds, but it may take months or years to fully understand how a house supports or fights your daily life. I happen to love living with lots of art, but unless the art surround is comfortable for the inhabitants, it's little more than gallery space. I always want to err on the side of human comfort. Modern homes often prioritize image. Why is that? Well, part of it's cultural. We now experience architecture visually before we experience it physically. People shop for houses online. They save inspiration images. They consume design through photographs and videos. And photographs reward drama. Large islands, double height spaces, walls of glass, perfectly symmetrical rooms, and minimal visual clutter. But what cameras don't capture are acoustics. They don't capture emotional comfort or practicality. They never capture maintenance burden or the stress created by bad layouts. And they don't capture sensory fatigue. A room can photograph beautifully and still feel terrible to live in. And many people discover that only after the excitement fades. I think there's another layer here too. Homes have increasingly become expressions of identity. People want homes that communicate their taste, their success, their sophistication, and their aesthetic awareness. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But sometimes houses stop being designed around living and start being designed around perception. The kitchen becomes a showpiece rather than a workspace, and the living room becomes visually pristine but emotionally stiff. Outdoor spaces look beautiful but rarely get used. And over time, maintaining that performance honestly becomes exhausting because real life is naturally messy. We had a party here last weekend, and one of the great joys of my soul was walking into the living room with guests who had never been in our home before, but were familiar with us as friends and neighbors, and seeing them put their feet up on the table in a relaxed, comfortable, at-home setting. That, to me, spoke volumes. Real life is not minimal. One thing beautifully photographed homes often hide is the sheer volume of everyday life. Humans generate activity constantly. Shoes pile up, mail arrives, backpacks land somewhere, dogs shake water everywhere, people leave glasses on table, and laundry exists. A house designed purely around visual perfection often struggles the moment ordinary life enters it. And that's why some homes feel like you're constantly trying not to ruin them. Emotionally, that creates tension. You stop relaxing and you start managing appearances. The most successful homes aren't the ones that resist life, they're the ones that absorb it gracefully. Good homes anticipate human behavior instead of fighting it. They understand where people naturally drop things and where traffic patterns developed. They get where clutter accumulates and where noise travels and where people want to gather instinctively. They create systems that support those realities instead of pretending that they don't exist. That's what real livability looks like. Not perfection, but accommodation. Kitchens are the clearest example of where this tension exists. Modern kitchens often prioritize visual impact above all else. Again, think about huge islands, open shelving, minimal upper cabinets, perfect symmetry, and fancy, expensive finishes. Visually, they're stunning, but some of them function terribly. There's nowhere practical to store daily items. There's no visual buffering for the messes that inevitably occur. There's insufficient task lighting, poor workflow, and not enough hidden storage. And let me put a support word in here for including toe kick drawers whenever you design a kitchen. Because if you don't do things cleverly, eventually the homeowners start compensating. Appliances stay permanently on the counter, clutter builds, and daily frustration builds. Kitchens aren't sculptures, they're workspaces. And the best kitchens understand that beauty and functionality are not natural enemies. They need each other. Now let's talk about open concept living, because this is one of the clearest examples of a design trend that looked incredible visually, but created unintended emotional consequences for many people. At first, open concept spaces feel expansive and modern, and in moderation, openness can absolutely improve connection and light. But fully open environments often eliminate something humans deeply need, and that's psychological separation. Think about it. Without boundaries, noise spreads everywhere. The visual clutter becomes unavoidable, activities are constantly overlapping, and there's nowhere to retreat. Many families eventually realize they miss doors, not because they dislike openness, but because humans need variation. Connection feels better when retreat also exists. There's an emotional importance of retreat. Getaway spaces are absolutely vital. One thing older homes often understood intuitively was the importance of emotional zoning. Different rooms had different moods, different purposes, and different levels of privacy. Modern homes sometimes flatten all experiences into one giant shared volume, and while that photographs beautifully, it can become overstimulating over time. Especially if you're an introvert like me, or a remote worker, or families with children, or people sensitive to noise, or anyone needing moments of calm. A good house allows both togetherness and separation. And honestly, many people don't realize how much they need retreat until they no longer have it. I think one of the best tests for a house is not how it feels during a showing. It's how it feels at 7 o'clock in the evening on an ordinary Tuesday. When everyone's tired, there's dishes in the sink, shoes are scattered somewhere. Lighting matters, acoustics matter, and comfort matters. Does the house soften your daily stress or does it amplify it? That's the real question. Because homes are not primarily experienced during ideal moments. They're experienced during ordinary life. And ordinary life deserves design attention too. Some houses are beautiful in ways that create quiet, constant labor. If you have a massive expanse of glass, it's gorgeous. But if you have a dog, it's nothing but nose prints. If you have difficult materials or overly complicated landscaping, that open shelving requires constant styling, and huge unused rooms need maintenance. Eventually, the homeowners become caretakers of an image rather than participants in a life, and that imbalance matters because homes should support energy, not consume all of it. This is one reason why people are increasingly drawn toward spaces that feel cozy rather than impressive. Because cozy spaces prioritize comfort. They're soft, they're proportional, they have emotional warmth, and they calm the senses. And humans tend to relax in spaces where they feel psychologically held rather than visually overwhelmed. That doesn't mean small or rustic necessarily, it means emotionally proportionate. A house can be luxurious and still feel deeply comforting. But comfort usually comes from the scale, light, acoustics, texture, and usability, not from the visual drama alone. Social media has changed how we view houses, and more importantly, how we see home. There's no question that social media has accelerated this issue in our lives dramatically. Homes are now constantly photographed, filmed, shared, and evaluated visually. And visual culture rewards minimalism, perfection, dramatic contrast, visual cleanliness, and highly curated styling. But real homes are dynamic. They change throughout the day, they hold activity, and they evolve with the seasons and stages of life. The pressure to maintain camera-ready environments can create subtle anxiety against inside homes, especially for families, because lived-in homes naturally resist visual perfection. And honestly, that resistance is healthy. Older homes, interestingly enough, often feel more humane. And this is partly why so many people feel drawn to older homes. They were designed around experience first. Smaller rooms, defined transition, human-scaled proportions, and windows placed thoughtfully for daily life rather than visual drama. Older homes certainly have flaws, and many of them are difficult to maintain, but a lot of them are emotionally easier to inhabit. They create intimacy. Modern homes sometimes prioritize impressiveness over intimacy, and humans need intimacy more than they need impressiveness. The one thing truly livable homes almost always include is transitional space. What do I mean? Well, think mudrooms, entryways, hallways, covered porches, reading corners, breakfast nooks. These are spaces that allow emotional decompression between activities. Modern design sometimes treats transitional spaces as inefficient because they don't maximize openness. But psychologically, transitions matter enormously. Humans need moments of adjustment. Without them, homes can begin feeling relentless. I think the best designers and architects eventually stop asking, how do I make this look impressive? And start asking, how do humans actually live? Where do people naturally gather? Where do they need quiet? How does the morning light affect their mood? Where does stress accumulate? And how can the house reduce friction instead of creating it? That shift in attitude and thinking changes everything. Because truly successful homes aren't performative, they're supportive. It's often why some vacation rentals feel better than real houses. Have you ever noticed that vacation rentals feel immediately relaxing in some ways that many permanent homes don't? It's often not because they're so luxurious, it's because they're simplified intentionally. They contain fewer visual demands, fewer obligations on our psyche, fewer unfinished tasks, and fewer reminders of responsibility. The environment just feels emotionally lighter. And many of us unconsciously crave that feeling in our permanent homes too. Not vacation aesthetics necessarily, but emotional ease. Real luxury is ease. And I honestly think our definition of luxury is changing. For a long time, luxury meant bigger, grander, more elaborate, more visible. But increasingly, people are craving something quieter. They're craving that ease. And that means a house that flows naturally, or spaces that calm the nervous system. It means storage that reduces visual stress, rooms that support actual routines, and materials that age gracefully instead of requiring perfection. That kind of luxury doesn't always photograph dramatically, but it feels incredible to live inside, and ultimately, that matters more. Our homes should support life, not compete with it. It's a simple idea. How do we live and not simply perform? How should our space reduce friction, create calm, allow rest, and support connection? How should our space hold ordinary life comfortably? The best homes understand that ordinary life is not a flaw to design around. It's the entire point. I think the houses people love most over time, the ones that sell most quickly, are rarely the most visually perfect ones. They're the homes that make daily life feel easier, softer, calmer, and much more grounded. It's homes where people can finally exhale. Homes where imperfections are allowed, where routines fit naturally, and where comfort matters as much as appearance. You can feel it, because eventually the excitement of visual perfection fades, but the experience of living somewhere happens every single day, and over time that matters infinitely more. Thank you for spending this time with me today on Cool House Connection. I hope you enjoyed today's deep dive. And if you'd like to continue it, just email me at debdaquin@mountainscarolina.com or call me at 406-407-0156. If what we talked about made sense to you, especially if you've ever lived in a house that looked amazing but somehow never felt relaxing, then maybe it's because deep down humans aren't just searching for a beautiful house. We're searching for a house that knows how to hold our real life gently. Be gentle with yourselves always, and stay cool.